First, oh, yes, thank you. So yeah, we're recording this meeting. So folks who can't attend will be able to watch it, and it will be put on the Be Heard site on the City of Vancouver's website related to homelessness issues. So again, just letting you know that this is recorded, and we're going to be meeting till about 8:30, and at that time we'll stop the recording. So if folks wanted to ask a question or have a more casual conversation, we will be the staff will be sticking around to have those conversations off recording as well. Just wanted to let you know that. First, I just want to introduce who's here and will be speaking to you or supporting this meeting tonight. And so I'll just go through the list, and if you can, because there's so many people, maybe just take yourself off of mute for a second and just say hello. That way your box will light up and people will see you. We have, first we have Deputy City Manager Lon Plucon.
Good evening, everyone.
All right, thank you. And then our homeless response coordinator for the city, Jamie Spinelli.
Hi, everybody.
All right. And then as support, we have City Manager's Office, Carrie Peck, who will be providing some support. And we also have, oh, sorry, going right ahead there. Then we also have some officers from the police department, Vancouver police officer and HART member, Tyler Chavers. And Tyler, where are you?
I'm here.
All right, great. And I thought I saw another officer here, that, or am I just making that up?
I'm here. I'm a Corporal Jeremy Free. I'm the district neighborhood.
Thank you, Jeremy. I couldn't think of your last name right away. Great. And then we also have Community Engagement Manager, William Cooley.
Good evening, everyone.
All right. And let's see. And then we have within, did I miss anybody from city support staff? I think I got everybody. Then we also have the community partners that are working with the first community site and would be the contractors for this proposed third site. And that is Adam Kravitz.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. I'm glad to hear you.
Yeah. And Ren Autry.
Hello.
Yeah. And we may also have another staff member from Outsiders In come a little bit later. And then
Matthew Oakes, he's here. He's out at the outpost.
okay, Matthew, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Oh. And just to acknowledge, you don't have to say hello here, but I just wanted to let you folks know that we have also as the participants, we have our mayor, Ann McInerney Ogle. And then I believe, so I'm looking through, that's all I'm seeing right now. We may have some other council members joining us. And as you scroll through the participants, you can also see that we've got members of the media here as well. So anyone else that I missed or would be helpful to acknowledge, folks? Other than so many great community members here to listen and share your perspectives.
This is Council Member Diana Perez.
Oh,
welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. I don't know if I missed you or if you just popped in.
I wanted to also recognize Battleground Council Member Mayor Pro Tem Sherish.
Great. Thanks, Adam.
And it looks like we also have County Councilor Temple Lentz here. So thank you for joining us.
Okay, great. All right. Well, we could spend the whole meeting introducing everybody. And I hope that throughout this, through a question or whether it's in chat or in person, that we'll be able to meet a lot of you in person in this way. So let's get started. And I promise that the period where we are doing information presenting is going to be very short. Our goal is to get through that in the next 20 or so minutes so that you have the remainder of that time for question and answer. This is the third information session that the city has done, and the other one, the first one was live and the second one has been recorded. So there may be more information that you get. There'll be a lot of the same information. What I'm going to do is have Lon take it over and just welcome folks and give a little overview on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Nancy. So I'll echo your sentiments on welcoming everybody to the virtual session tonight, where we talk about the proposal that the city has to put a third safe stay community into downtown Vancouver. For those of you that I haven't met, Lon Pluckon, I'm one of the city's 2 deputy city managers, and I have the portfolio of departments that includes what I call the built environment team, which is planning, public works, parks, rec, cultural services, economic development, policy and program. But by virtue of that, climate and homelessness are 2 of the programs that fall underneath my umbrella as well. So as Nancy said, my initial role here is to really talk a little bit about how Vancouver has arrived at where we are today, and what we see the face of homelessness as in Vancouver, and a little bit of the history and what we've seen since we've started the other safe stay communities. The presentation will go into more detail about those, and then we'll have question and answer, as Nancy said at the end. But I think it's important for everybody to understand, how the changes in the last 4 or 5 years have really shaped the way that communities in the Pacific Northwest respond to issues around homelessness. So at the same time that Vancouver has been growing and we've been seeing increases in the number of homelessness across the community, there was a substantial change in the legal landscape as far as how communities had to be able to respond to issues for people that didn't have housing. And there was a court decision in 2018 called Martin v. Boise that basically, the short version of it is, it held that not having housing because you don't have the money to afford housing is not in and of itself criminal. And so cities could not treat people that were unhoused as criminals solely for being unhoused. And it further held that as a city, we had a responsibility to ensure that if we were going to tell somebody that they couldn't park in or camp or stay or live on public property, that we had to have an alternative for them. There had to be a place for them to go. And that's been a difficult standard, I think, for communities across the nation to be able to meet, primarily because of a long-standing housing crunch that the community has been experiencing. Vancouver is very short on housing at all levels, but it all culminates in placing a lot of pressure on us at the affordable end of the housing spectrum. So as far as, the folks in our community that are primarily make up our homeless population are people that have ties to Vancouver in some way, shape, or form. They grew up here, they had family here, but the overwhelming majority of people that are unhoused in our community are here because they have ties to Vancouver, and they call Vancouver home. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind as a community is that being unhoused doesn't mean that you give up your rights. From the perspective of the city, from the perspective of law enforcement, a person who's unhoused has exactly the same constitutional rights as a person who owns a $15 million mansion. They're a citizen of Vancouver, they're a voter in Vancouver, and have all the rights and privileges that come with that. And so as we looked to shape the way that we respond to the homeless issue across the community, we had a couple of things that we needed to do. One was to be able to provide additional shelter, but as we started to develop our strategy around that, one of the things that we really wanted to do was to successfully provide a path for people to transition out of homelessness into more permanent housing. And so the program we have with the Safe Stay communities was really designed around that, providing a safe, stable place for people to be able to work on whatever obstacles they may have that prevent them from being successful in the past in transitioning over to permanent housing, whether it's substance abuse, mental issues, physical issues. There are a host of reasons why people may be unhoused, but the design of our program is really to allow them to work with people who understand what they're going through, understand the psychology of it, and really be able to meet them where they are to successfully ultimately transition away and move into permanent housing. We still have a severe lack of affordable housing. One of the reasons why safe stay villages are intended to be temporary is because it's giving us time to be able to work with our community partners, like groups like the Vancouver Housing Authority, private entities, to build and develop more affordable housing around our community so that we have more options beyond using safe stay communities. But in order for us to be able to really effectively address the issue, we've got to have locations around the community. We try to target areas where there are already substantial populations of homeless that can really take advantage of the services. Much like everybody else, our homeless population chooses a neighborhood based on the attributes of that neighborhood. And so we try to really put effort into meeting people where they are. This would be the third one. Our plan is to have 5 locations around the community, distributed around the community, and we'll walk through some of the siting criteria as part of the presentation here in a few minutes. And then eventually, if conditions stay the same, the next stage would be to have a larger bridge shelter somewhere in the community as we work to create the permanent long-term solution that we really know it's going to take. At the last meeting, I didn't express my gratitude to one of the participants in bringing up mental health later on in the discussion, but just wanted to highlight that, that can be a significant struggle and a significant obstacle in accessing mental health resources. Just ask that when you're on and talking about our homeless population, just remember that they are people, they are citizens just like everybody else. And one of the hallmarks of our program has been to understand that we need to be able to treat people with dignity, humanity, and grace. And with that, I will turn it over.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to take a moment for us to see who's in the room, because I think as Lon noted, we've got lots of different groups, both in the room and in our community. And so we have a poll here that we'd like you to fill out. We don't collect who's filling out what, but it just helps us to see who's here tonight. When you think about this proposed site for 415 West 11th, what best describes you? And I see folks have already started. So we're going to just give folks a minute to quickly share that if you're willing. And that helps us kind of see that, yeah, we've got a broad spectrum of people who live here, work, who have experienced homelessness or received support. And we're about 85%. So anybody else who wants to fill it out, might be some of us, might be me. I'm not filling it out, which is why we're not seeing the full. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and show you what we have at this point. Oh, looks like somebody already did. Thank you. So we've got about just almost 40% of folks live nearby or have a work or own a business. And then, just over 10% of folks, which is a lot for this group, have experienced homelessness or otherwise received some kind of support. And then we've got a good number of people, almost 50%, who've done some volunteer work relating to homelessness. And then lots of interest from other parts of the city. So we'll go ahead and stop sharing that and just appreciate again that you're here. And so we do know that this issue and the evening's conversation and, the question of this location is really something that deeply impacts people in different ways, depending on, which one of those answers you filled out, you're going to have a different impact. And so we want to just acknowledge that we know that there can be a lot of different feelings with that. And so if we can root the conversation tonight in respect for those different perspectives and places, this can be a really valuable community conversation. And so some of the guidelines that we want to put forth for today are around one, coming from your own experience. And there's enough people, I think, representing all the different kinds of concerns and needs and values. So we really want to hear from you and your experience. it can be really helpful if you can come, and this is for everybody, presenters, as well as community members. We can come and listen to understand each other. So, be in a place where you're willing to learn. You don't have to change your position. That's not the goal tonight, as much as it is to help provide understanding and learning. And then, of course, I talked about that need for respect. So I hope we can have respectful conversations, both in the questioning and the sharing, and make sure that everybody has a chance to participate. So I'll be trying to help that, but I need your help in making sure that everybody gets a chance. And lastly, it's just the most important thing about this conversation is we want to hear from you. Your questions are valuable. So with that, we'll move on to just have a brief presentation from Jamie, as well as the proposed providers for the proposed site. And again, expect that to be fairly short. We're going to try to answer some of the common questions that you might have, and then we'll be able to dive in deeper to more specific ones once the presentation is done. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and I know she's got some helpful information slides for you to look at as well.
I'm muted. There we go. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. So as she said, my name is Jamie Spinelli, and I am the Homeless Response Coordinator for the City of Vancouver. And my role at the city is to specifically address the impacts of unsheltered homelessness. So we've got other staff and departments that work on things like developing affordable housing, overseeing contracts for rental assistance, affordable housing fund, and those kinds of things. But my job is to manage how we address what we're all seeing outside, which is largely people living in places that are not meant for human habitation, whether that be a tent, a vehicle, and then to mitigate those impacts, which I think the entire community is feeling, not just the homeless community. So homelessness, as you can kind of see in the data there, has become a much bigger issue in our community over the last 3 to 5 years. And we certainly are not alone in that. This is happening all over the country. I think interestingly, homelessness in total has gone down nationwide, but unsheltered homelessness has increased pretty drastically. And so we're kind of echoing what we see all over the community. It's important to note that these counts that we do, the point in time count every year, is considered a pretty significant undercount. It's just a snapshot of a single point in time, usually done around the same time every year, to kind of give us a baseline of what's happening in our community. It allows us to look at trends and then kind of compare year to year data. So while we physically counted 625 people in all of Clark County living outdoors this year, I can tell you, because I'm in camps kind of all of the time, that we probably have 500 to 600 people living unsheltered just within city limits alone. There are many reasons that someone can fall into homelessness. The homeless community is just as diverse as the house community, and the reasons that people become homeless are also as varied and diverse as the people experiencing it. Because of that, the solutions need to be diverse. There is no one solution to homelessness, and there is no one entity that can or will solve it. It requires the city, the county, community partners, the state, federal government, and this is just kind of a small sampling of the organizations in our community working to end homelessness. So I wanted to include this just because I've heard some misconceptions about where service providers are located in this community. So there are some people who believe that all of the services are concentrated downtown, and then there are others who believe there are no services downtown. These are certainly not all of the services available to people experiencing homelessness, but they are the most widely used, in my opinion. And you can see that they are spread out all over the community. In fact, most of our shelters now are in Central to East Vancouver versus downtown, as was historically the case. I did want to also mention that this is the same for our unsheltered population. Years ago, it was true that the majority of homelessness was downtown. And while we do still certainly have a very large number of people living downtown, we now have hundreds of people all over our city without shelter. And so because of that, the city has committed resources and a dedicated team, which I will go into a little bit more detail about later, to mitigating the impacts that outdoor living has on the entire community. And these are just kind of some of the things that we're doing, but the overarching goal is really health, safety, and sanitation for everyone. Next slide, please. But we aren't really moving the needle on homelessness if all we are doing is cleaning up after folks or moving people from block to block. So in addition to those other efforts, we've established what we call safe state communities. These are small 20-unit managed and supportive micro shelter communities that provide safer and more humane living conditions for folks needing and wanting to transition out of homelessness. So these communities provide safe non-congregate shelter for up to 40 residents at a time. Each has a provider that is on site 24/7. And their job is really kind of management of the site as well as stabilizing supportive services for the folks who live there. So they do things like connect residents with outside service providers, intensive case management, employment assistance, and connect people to kind of a wide range of healthcare services. So their role is really supporting residents in addressing whatever their barriers are to stability and housing, with an emphasis on that health and wellness. They all have screening or fencing, as well as sanitation and hygiene services on site. Our ultimate goal, as Lon said earlier, is to have enough shelter and permanent housing to ensure that no one needs to live outdoors. So in addition to these safe state communities, not just this one, but at least a couple additional ones, we're looking to start planning for a larger shelter, and then of course continue to work on more affordable housing. So last year, our city council approved site selection criteria that staff utilizes to determine appropriate locations for these communities. They need to be within a half mile of public transit, equitably spaced around the city, and avoid areas of high economic vulnerability. They also directed us to attempt to serve people as close to where they already are as possible. So this specific property that we're talking about today, which is on that map there, is being proposed because it meets all of that criteria. And we have a significant number of people living unsheltered in the downtown area that need to be served. Also on that map, you can kind of see I don't know if it's green or tan, it's hard to tell. But that circle is the no camping buffer that will go around every site that we have, which is one of the benefits to having a safe state community, I suppose, in your area or any others. So we implement a 1,000-foot no camping buffer around all of our sites, and that's something that is strictly enforced by VPD as well as the city's HEART team, because the goal is to reduce the impacts of homelessness for everyone, including the people living in these sites. So Outsiders In, which is the organization running our first site, was selected to operate our third site, wherever that ends up being. So it will be their job to maintain and staff the site 24/7, ensure the code of conduct is adhered to, and provide stabilizing supports to the residents. They specifically were chosen because of their success at our first site, their extensive experience with providing shelter and outreach support prior to this project, and because as a peer-run organization, they are uniquely qualified to be doing this work. But I wanted to let Adam and/or Ren share some information about Outsiders In, their experience as providers, and their service delivery model, just kind of as an organization. Take it away.
Good evening, everybody. In order to share our voice, which is one of our best features, I am going to make sure that both Renee Autry and Matthew Oakes have some time, but I will try to keep it brief. Thank you for attending. Thank you for letting us hear you. I will start by saying that both me and Renee Autry come from a place of shared homeless experience. We met both coming out of our homeless experience in 2014. We both started working as state certified peer support specialists, and for different agents, well, the same agency and then different agencies at later on. As we explored our experiences together, we really had a desire to start a nonprofit and make a difference in the homeless services in Vancouver. We started out as advocates and storytellers, where we would really elevate folks' voice, talk about services that are needed, and understood that people with the experience should be the folks guiding some of the services provided. We started educating ourselves, sitting on boards, and entertaining different kinds of committees, showing up at every meeting that had everything to do with anything homeless in Vancouver. And while we continued to tell folks stories, organize groups, and hold events. Soon later, we partnered with faith agencies, faith-based communities, churches, and found that they were willing to use their space and our mission matched their ministry. And we were able to shift and pivot volunteers and our resources and understanding of what's needed and our connection to the homeless community to be able to provide severe weather shelters at a drop of a dime during severe weather, whether it be hot or cold weather. We did that for a number of years, basically under the radar without many folks knowing who we were or what we were doing. And then we also, over the years, have been very instrumental in holding the homeless memorial event and any other kind of event that would really advocate and support the need for more shelter, the need for more services, and the need for more agencies to drop their silos and open up their services in a way that is different and unique. The Pure movement is special and unique in that same way. But COVID happened. And when COVID happened, there was an opportunity because there was no longer volunteer opportunities. And we were asked, would you be able to hire a workforce and get a strong board of directors and be able to step into the service provider realm? That was in January of 2020. We did rather quickly find some very we asked the most influential people that we knew in the community, would they consider it? And 10 of those people, or 7 of those people, sorry, 7 of those people stepped up. They've been with us since, and they have been the guiding force behind our success. People that you may not know, but some of them are in the room tonight. And the reality is, then we hired our first 8 people, and we were able to start operating a shelter in April 1st of 2020. I'll jump forward, fast forward that to where we're at today. We have over 30 folks. We have 5 operating programs right now with 4 operating programs with a 5th and 6th program starting hopefully in the next few months. Our 5th program is a second shelter, and I'll just briefly go over those. So we have a St. Paul's men's shelter, 25 men overnight shelter in the downtown core that we have been operating for the last 2.5 years. Relatively few incidences and a lot of successes. We have a mail service where we operate mail to anyone in Clark County that needs an address. And that is provides 6-day-a-week pickup at 2 different locations that serves enormous amount of people that are being able to get provided mail, very needed mail. I have an outreach team, a very small but dedicated and fast-acting outreach team that responds a lot with the city's team. So they work closely with the HEART team and with the Safe Park program, and they're able to quickly respond as well as carry a caseload and really be very successful. On top of that, we have a wintertime shelter that opens up. It's our satellite overflow shelter that will take in some of our most vulnerable folks. Again, the folks that we serve in our safe state communities that were never being served before. And that is folks that are couples, people with pets, single females, and single males. All these opening these opportunities for rapid placement for folks that are in dire need. So that is a 15-bed shelter that happens every wintertime. Plus our safe state community where we're holding 25 to 35 folks at any given time. And then the new program, hopefully, whatever location that ends up being, we will be the operators of the next safe state community. Well, one of the other things that makes us very uniquely qualified is that we only employ folks like myself who've been through the experience of homelessness, been through the experience of addiction, mental health recovery, or other types of recovery, but specifically stemming from our housing instability and our need to recover from that. So our workforce is primarily made up of those folks. And then the special part of that is how we really dive into the community and invite the community to bring their services to us instead of put up a wall and act like we are the only one allowed to do it. And Renya, I'm sure you could talk a little bit about that.
So that's kind of part of the exciting part that I get into is building a network of community-based workers. And so part of my history, I was part of Southwest Washington region in building a Health Connect network. And in that, we break down silos between agencies and organizations that are on the front line, people who are in the neighborhoods, who are community health workers, that they have cultural connections, they have lived experience connections. And that's what our workforce is all about. We hire folks with that lived experience, and then we work with state and regional people to, work together and work consistently in a way. And we use evidence-based models like the Pathways model to connect people to sort resources and services that are kind of hard to get to if you have trouble navigating systems and things that are kind of driven by poverty. And these are things that are called social determinants of health. And that's like, having medication, but do you have a refrigerator to be able to store that medication? Do you have stability to be able to get into those healthier routines that we need to be able to get those things done? And so we break down those silos and work with community partners and close connections. And some of those partnerships include like Council for the Homeless, Lifeline Connections, Recovery Cafe of Clark County, the Columbia River Mental Health, Community Services Northwest CMAR, Clark County Crisis Team, the Heart Team. We've even had the public health people come out to the outpost, the first safe stay community, and they had an Narcan and harm reduction training. And so we got to the people who were staff and team members, and then even people who were a part of the Talking Trash team came out, and then they met with our residents and guests that were in the community, and we learned about harm reduction strategies, and we understood about opioid overdoses and how to administer Narcan if that was the case. And we appreciate all the help and support that we get through these agencies and these partnerships. And another one of those partnerships that I know that they're in the room and they may be able to speak even deeper in the future is like the YMCA. And they've helped partner with us in providing showers and healthy routines and exercise and regular life connections, and then also opportunities for employment. And so some of our folks have been able to access those next steps in connecting with employment through our neighbors and through our partnerships with those other organizations that we get to build this community, because whenever they say it takes a village, it really does take a village, and it takes reconnecting to community through these opportunities to stabilize and to reconnect. And I know that Matt kind of talks and works on those kinds of things going on a daily basis, and he can probably tell you how somebody will come and come to be a part of that community and find those routines. Maybe take it away, Matt.
Matt, just so you know, we just have a few minutes so we can get to the question and answer portion. So go ahead.
No problem. I just kind of wanted to briefly explain the process of getting into our community, how to go about that, and then kind of a day-to-day. So the process that we generally go by is we'd like to see somebody working with one of the outreach teams, and that can be from any organization in the community. After they've been working with them, anywhere from 0 to 30 days, we generally try to shoot for the long end of that one. They do an application with their case manager. they do a letter of interest, which is stating basically where they were, where they're at, and where they want to be. And then a referral letter from their case manager. So we kind of get a nice picture painted when they walk through the door. And then I bring them in, and when we accept somebody in, we instantly jump into creating an individual plan of action to help them navigate, just kind of integrating back into the community. And it's different for everybody. Everybody's in a different place. And that really means meeting them where they're at, with this shared lived experience that all of our staff members have. We're able to meet people on all levels and all different scopes. So it really provides the space for them to feel like we're here and we're listening. That includes coming straight in, knocking on doors and saying good morning so that, they see our face and they know we're here. Reminding them of appointments, helping them get bus passes to get to those appointments. Sometimes in the beginning, it means helping them set those appointments up, and then they learn how to do it for themselves and then to continue on.
Are you
Yeah,
at
it's just
the
a-
outpost tonight, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, we got residents sometimes come in, you'll hear the staff in and out, the doorbell rings. When somebody comes up to the gate, there's a doorbell for guests, so that they're greeted by any one of the staff members 24 hours a day. There's also a dinger, so when somebody comes through the gate, whether it be a resident, staff member, or anyone, we are alerted so we can immediately go out and meet them, usually with a smile. Yeah, I mean, it's so individual day to day. We do have new things that come up. So we're all learning, we're all doing what we can. We all work together. All these wonderful organizations have come together to support these communities. It's just been amazing to watch people come in with no hope and leave feeling like they did something they didn't know was possible. It's very emotional almost every single day for me to see the change on people's faces when they go from completely broken to they have a chance. Yeah.
Thank you.
You can't beat that. So
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I know that you might have other things to share with folks as we go on with the question and answers so that they can understand, what these sites are like. I do want to just turn over to Jamie very briefly, Jamie, so we can get to question and answers. But I think my sense is folks want to know how these sites are actually doing. So take it away.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe we can just skip over to, so I mean, this is just some info about our very first Safe State community, where it's at, what they do, and they've just kind of already explained that. There's some photos that we can kind of scroll through. And we can maybe either put it up now or we can put it up while we're talking, because there's typically questions about what kind of outcomes we're seeing, and we do have a great deal of wonderful outcomes from this site. Like 30% of the original residents, or of the first 46 in the first 6 months, have achieved housing, permanent housing, and are still there. At least 11 people have received employment and are still maintaining it, which is amazing. And then I wanted to also go on to just to kind of quickly explain the HEART team, because that's something that that is can be utilized a great deal by communities where these exist, as well as just the whole rest of the community. So this is the team that I mentioned earlier that's dedicated to addressing unsheltered homelessness in kind of a variety of ways. We have a dedicated outreach worker, a police officer, and a public works employee. And then I participate in that team and manage it. We spend all of our time providing outreach to people living outdoors, connecting them to services, coordinating encampment cleanups, enforcing that no camping buffer, and coordinating with the local homeless crisis response system. And then we are really just kind of like the city's one point of contact for community members if you have concerns regarding homelessness or questions, things like that. And so that is who would enforce that 1,000-foot no camping buffer around this site and any other, although any other officer can also enforce that.
Okay, great. And certainly as we have questions around the HEART team and what the police department is doing, we have folks here to answer that. So at this point, I think we're going to move on to the question and answer portion. And so there's two ways that you can participate. One is we're going to have the chat available to be able to ask questions if you want to ask questions that way or share some information about your perspective. And then we're also, you can go to the reactions and raise your hand, and that will put you at the top of my queue to for me to call on you so that you can speak in the meeting. And what I'm going to try to do is balance those so that I'm going back and forth between the chat. We'll try to answer as many chat questions as possible, but just want you to have patience to know that we're trying to make sure there's a balance here. Again, just a reminder, let's make sure everybody has a chance to participate. We want to hear your perspective. Just be mindful of your airtime. And, you know, like if you're a guest at someone else's house, you know, don't take seconds in terms of the second question or opportunity to speak until everyone's had a first chance. So we will stay later, and we will, there's lots of other ways folks are willing to talk to you directly outside of this meeting if you don't get all your questions answered. So with that, we will start with the first raised hand, and then I'll be pulling out these chat questions as well. So Haley, would you like to go forward with your question? And you have to take yourself off mute. There we go.
Sorry, it was actually a comment if that's fine.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, great. I just wanted to comment that I've seen the argument that this won't make a big dent. 40 people isn't making a very big dent in our homeless community, but according to the point in time count, which is an annual census administered by the Council for the Homeless, we've got approximately 500 unsheltered people in Vancouver. So between these 3 safe stays that can all house 40 people, that's potentially up to 25% of our homeless community, which is not a small number in any sense. And I think this particular location will be especially vital considering the large portion of the houseless people who live in downtown. I'm kind of surprised to see some of the not in my backyard kind of attitude here, because downtown, it seems like it's already your backyard. These people are here, and I don't see how getting them into homes and out of desperate situations is going to increase crime. If anything, I suspect that we are going to see a reduction in crime, and that in general, you know, I know people think, oh, this is going to be an eyesore, but people on the street is not any less than an eyesore. It provides situations that might lead to confrontation or discomfort. So overall, I think this is a really good location. It's walkable, it's accessible. I'm really excited to see this potentially happen. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing your perspective, Haley. Again, all perspectives in terms of both support or concerns is welcome here. We do have a question from Nakia in the chat, and we're trying to answer it, which is around will sanitation services clean up surrounding Brox? I'm going to try to do a quick summary so folks that aren't paying, can be hard sometimes to pay attention to the conversation and the chat at the same time. So Jamie is saying we contract with Share for the Talk and Trash program, and that they will do litter pickup. Heart works on sanitation. So, let's see. And then there's a comment from Michael around people, the people that are served at a safe day community are not stagnant, and as they are housed, someone else comes in. So yes, there's a flow through there. Another question coming in from Cheryl, will drugs and alcohol be allowed to be used by the safe stay folk? There's a concern that can drive up the theft in the neighborhood. And sounds like it's been a personal experience. I'm sorry to hear that for you, Cheryl. Demi, I see your hand, but let's have that question be answered.
So I can tell you there are no illegal drugs allowed in the safe stay community. That's for sure. But if there are any other legal substances that present as a barrier for moving forward for folks, that's something that's pretty immediately addressed once they get in.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say barrier, can you just speak to
Sure.
a little bit what that
Sure.
terminology means in this case?
Yeah, and that includes things like, maybe it could be alcohol, it could be marijuana, but it could also be like spending too much money on cigarettes or lottery tickets, or in my case, coffee. Anything that is a barrier to being able to like save your money, move out onto your own, things like that, that are just like that prevents you from being able to move forward in life, whatever that looks like for each person, because everybody's got kind of different barriers to that. But that's what Aaron just said actually is untrue. We have drug tested many people, and many people request that actually as part of their kind of journey through that. People have asked for kind of accountability in their process.
Okay. All right. And sounds like that's helpful for Aaron to know. So thank you for clarifying that. Demi, why don't you go ahead? Renee, we see your hand, and I'm also keeping an eye on the chat, and so are others. So we're trying to answer, but make sure you all get the same information.
Yes, thank you so much, Nancy. I wanted to offer some perspective. I work for the YMCA, which is right next door to the outpost. We were a part of the first cleanup. We were a part of the first community that was planted. And I can offer feedback that there was a lot of fear of not knowing what was coming. But since it has been up and running, it's been nothing but a blessing to our community. And I really want to bring that perspective to people and be a spokesperson for the kind of impact that they are creating with these safe stay communities. And I know the businesses, also the apartment complex that's right next door, have all been very grateful for the change in our community. That it is, it's much more communicative. We stay in constant contact with the people that are employed there, and as well as their residents. And we build those relationships with them, and they have become kind of they take a lot of responsibility for our parking lot, for things that happen. We've even sent them, hey, pictures of people that have stolen things from our parking lot. They're like, I know that person. He hangs out over in this area, and we've had great follow-up and a lot less loss in our area due to that. So they volunteer for us. They share their lives with us, and we have employed a couple of them. So anybody who is working downtown, if you want to come, talk to me at the YMCA. I had a business owner come just today, and we walked over, and Jamie over at the Outpost took us on a tour. We talked about things that have come out of it. So I am open to that all over the place. I think what they're doing is great.
Okay, great. Thank you, Demi, for sharing that perspective. And I think my sense is, for folks who are living in this area where this new site is proposed, it can be helpful to hear that perspective from someone involved in an organization that's close by. So I appreciate you being willing to come and share that perspective and communicate your experience so that you're helping to reduce that uncertainty. Renee, I see your hand. Did you take it down?
Once you acknowledged, I took it back down. So my name is Renee Stevens, and I'm the executive director at Open House Ministries. I have a couple of comments, and not questions, but one is personal. So I work in downtown. Obviously, I run a homeless shelter for families. I've also been homeless myself with 3 kids back in 1999. So I've experienced it, come through it, and now I'm in the downtown corridor. I kind of agree with some statements that are being made of, it's homelessness it's already there. We've really got a crisis on our hands, and we've been begging for help for years. I do feel like the city is stepping up. This is the Stay Safe is shown that it's safe. I love the word safe when we talk about it. And so I'm a little surprised that there's a lot of backlash, because the city is stepping up saying, hey, this is an idea that we have that we can utilize for couples and single people in our community. And yet there's still some backlash about it. And So on a personal note, I would just like to say, if you have a family member or yourself and you've experienced homelessness, it's devastating. There's a lot of hopelessness. I can say personally, I've dropped one of my family members off at the Stay Safe on 51st. And when I dropped them off and I drove away, it was the first time in a year that I felt like they actually had a chance in this world. Like that, oh my gosh, they're going to get the help that they need. I see a lot of the comments on the side as, our people are progressing. Matt talked, Adam talked. This is goal oriented by the individuals. I can say that I know that for a fact. They come alongside the folks. When there was a problem that arose, I was called in as not only a family member, but also as a homeless provider in the community of, hey, how can we help? I know that the staff loves and cares and has compassion. And a lot of times that's what these folks need. They need to have compassion in their lives. So I'm very supportive of the Stay Safe community, and professionally, I think it's one of the couples that actually lived at the Safe Stay is now living in one of our housing units, where if we wouldn't have been connected to Safe Stay prior to that, they probably wouldn't have been housed. So I'm excited to be a partner with them as well to offer housing for people.
Great. Well, thank you, Renee. And I think, again, if folks have particular questions, it sounds like you also offer another perspective and information about what the experience has been like with Safe Stay communities. I want to address just some of the comments that are coming through in the chat, so that folks can be hard to toggle forward. So I'm not going to read everything verbatim, but just going to note to you some of the discussion that's happening. There was a question from Matt around what happens if Safe Stay isn't working for someone to get out of homelessness. Do they just get to stay there? So I don't know. I mean, maybe perhaps you can just speak briefly to an experience of what it's like, what that experience of what it's like.
Yeah, no problem. Everyone that comes in is in a different place, right? So the time it takes for someone to engage varies. They're coming in on fight or flight. So it does take a little bit of time for them to feel comfortable, to engage with staff, for them to feel like somebody's there for them, right? So like I said, that varies. If someone chooses to not engage in us supporting them in any way, then sometimes it does get to the point where we can no longer help them, and we still keep the gate open, ready to take them when they are ready.
Okay. All right. And there were a couple questions around, whether there's 12-step meetings, or whether those are welcomed, and then there was also a question which looked like it was answered around whether there was any drug overdose. And Jamie noted that there was one, Narcan was provided, and that there was a requirement that that person attend detox treatment, and they opted to leave instead. So again, kind of an example of what you were saying, Matthew, as well, as you try to help, and if they're not willing to. Go ahead, Ren.
And then that was what really precipitated the community members reaching out in our community meetings as we were talking together and saying, well, we need to learn more. That was scary. And so as they expressed processing around the situation, then we reached out to other people in the community to say, can we help support these folks in learning more and feeling more confident, or at least being able to understand these conversations that need to be had around it. And so public health came in, and some of those pictures that she had shared, we had like 32 people that were at that training. And in the same thing, if as any neighborhood, if something happens, we want to do what we can to collectively respond, and how can we do that better?
Okay, great, thank you. Temple, I see your hand. I want to get through just a few more chats so we can have some balance between the chats and the comments. One question was around the 12-step meetings. Are those being held there, or do people just go to them outside? Go ahead, Adam.
Both. When we have a group that wants to come out, we definitely would love to host a meeting if we have the interest, if we have enough people that are in active recovery. Our census changes on a regular basis. So the popular rendition out there is that homelessness is filled with addiction. Currently, we have over 50 people with very little active or even minor addiction issues. We talk about recovery a lot. And so if people do come with us with active addiction, this is the place to get to work. And so really, we do have a lot of folks that are also regular attendees at the Recovery Cafe or the Recovery Resource Center and attend meetings, their regular meetings in town. But we are not opposed to having any kind of support meetings in our communities in any location.
Okay, great. And how many people have transitioned from the outpost into housing?
I think there was a number in there that was close to 25
We've got,
at
yeah,
this
I think we've
point
got
at 9 months or 10 months.
25 now, and we've got, I think, 3 or 4 that are about to move out in the next few weeks.
Okay.
I agree.
One
And
more
it does-
question, and then we'll get to Temple. So there's a question about the people with severe mental illness, whether or not those are expected to be residents at the Safe Stay, and will there be requirements around medication for their illness?
I'll go ahead and answer that a little bit. Severe mental illness is subjective. I've once been diagnosed with severe mental illness, but yet I'm here. So that's beside the point. People with mental illness, if they go through the application process, they're supported from the other community members, they may come in. And never is it okay for us to ever force medications on anyone ever. It's against the law. So people have a choice to take medications, but it is a behavior-based program, and if people are getting along, we understand how to work with people on what it is that is their wellness, and we will be there to support them along the way. And for the record, we have had many people with severe mental illness already graduate through our program, and you never heard anything about it.
Yeah, I want to also just mention, because I'm always just so impressed by this, everybody, but this one young man that I worked with for years, 7 years, who has schizophrenia, who I thought would need to be institutionalized because we didn't have anything in this community that appropriately supported him. And he has moved into the Safe Stay. He now works for the YMCA. He's got his first job ever. And this is a young man who'd been on the street since he was 13 years old. And it is a night and day difference. I am forever impressed by what people are able to accomplish with a little bit of stability and a lot of support in these sites.
Okay, great.
A lot of support.
Thank you. All right. I will appreciate the helping people understand and clarifying how you're looking at people's mental health issues. Temple, thank you for your patience. Please go ahead. And we can't hear you, so you have to do that thing where you take yourself off mute.
You'd think after 2 years, I'd finally get the hang of it. No, thank you. I just thank you everybody for the presentation and for the content here, the information you're providing, but also just very specifically the thoroughness and thoughtfulness that has gone into creating this entire program. And thank you to the city for making this happen, all of the operators and the folks who've been a part of it. From my perspective, working with the county, I know that there is so much to do. And what I most appreciate about this is the proactive effort to help people move into self-sufficiency in a supported and safe way. And the results that you're posting for the outpost are incredible. The success rate for most of the programs that are out there to help people move through housing, move through addiction support, move through any kind of recovery have much lower success rates. And it's so impressive to see this, and then to see people who've been a part of it come back and talk about their experiences and help others. I'm grateful that this is happening in the city of Vancouver. My district in the county is District 1. This site would be in District 1. And I hope that it will happen and that we'll be able to see and help and support more folks move into self-sufficiency. A question that I have is if folks have some free time and want to help this effort, what are ways that people can get involved to help all of the efforts, whether they're here or at any of the other sites, be successful?
Who wants to take that one? I can tell you that Adam and Rin have an amazing meal train going on. So that's kind of always up in the air as an option.
And yeah, the first and most active way as we head into our winter season is, so our safe state communities don't have kitchens. And I mean, we have a small kitchen with some microwaves and stuff, but to keep a good healthy meal coming on a regular basis, we rely on our community cooks and our meal train. And so yeah, thank you with the meal train link in the chat. And so yeah, people and groups, and it doesn't have to be just individuals, help create these meals. And we have it can be like lunch and grab and go bags for lunch and dinners at night. And it's an awesome way to be able to bring some home cooking feels to the location. And then people can drop off if they feel more comfortable that way, or they can stay and serve and get to know people and have conversations. And I know that some of those conversations really, they create friendships and connections. And then the next time that you come out, it's like, how's it going? And it's like, I couldn't wait to get your meatloaf in here. And then certain people are barbecuing, and it's just been a great way to connect over meals, like in any other community connection. So I encourage the meal train is the easiest way to start connecting.
I mean, there really is a variety of ways. So I mean, like, I personally have gone out and done painting parties because I love to paint. Also, art is therapeutic. So that's awesome. There's a lady who brings different fabric out and lets the residents choose their fabric, and she makes curtains for the little windows on the shelters. That's an easy way.
We have a little library. We've done community seed exchanges. The youth group at the YMCA had come and helped us create our what was the garden, and it became a meditation garden, and they helped us make it even more special and healing space. And so yeah, it's been amazing.
So a ton of ideas for you, Temple, and others that are here, and certain that they welcome new ideas too. I want to move us on to some other comments, and I do see Tatum and Bridget, so if you'll just be patient while we do a little chat review. There's a comment from Ginger that notes that she supports the city's effort to provide services to the homeless community. She's concerned about the effect of this particular location on her investment in downtown, and also that she had helped revitalize the downtown Vancouver. So concerned about the impact on her property value. And she's wondering, is the city prepared to compensate those who've been affected? And I'm wondering, Lon, I'm wondering if that might be something that you can address in terms of that concern about how this might be affecting property values and what the city is considering there.
Yeah, I think what that is one of the reasons why these are intended to be temporary. So safe state communities have a lifetime that's limited per code to 3 years. So that's the maximum that a permit can last. That is for a couple of different reasons. One is so that we can be nimble. And if we see that, homelessness is really starting to rise in one area of the community, we have the ability to move and pivot and move one over to another area to address it. But also then, it's not something that is a long-term fixture in the neighborhood where it would have that kind of long-term impact on potential property values. So far, we haven't seen anything from properties surrounding the existing ones to indicate that there has been any kind of an impact. Sometimes I think that when people talk about property values, another way that that gets termed is marketability of properties. And I think that's where the safe state communities have a significant positive impact, because we're able to use the buffer zone around the area to essentially ensure that, you know, people coming to look at properties, stay at properties, whatever it is, they're coming through an area that doesn't have unsanctioned camping occurring in it anymore. And I think, you know, for us, that serves a couple of different purposes. One is, you know, as you've heard on the meeting tonight, we want the environment inside the community to be absolutely safe for people that are staying there, but also to make sure that the area around, you know, if you've got somebody who's going through addiction recovery or something like that, we don't want them to leave the community to go to a bus stop and walk through 5 different people that are trying to deal to them or something like that. So we want to make sure that the environment around it is safe and protective as well. Really, you know, the core of this is to help people really reintegrate into the broader community at large. You know, each safe stay develops kind of a flavor of their own and a little bit of a culture of their own, but they truly are a community. And that's how I think part of the success of it is that some of the other models for housing out there would just say, you know, the first thing you should do is put someone into housing. But without that supportive environment, without those support services and helping people to address the obstacles that they have to being able to stay in that housing, it's a temporary solution at best. And we're really looking here for a long-term solution that addresses the root causes of why folks are unhoused in the first place.
Thank you for that, Lon. Let's go to, I think, Tatum, you were there before Bridget. So go ahead and.
For me. So I was on the last call, I think under my son's name, Anson, because he was logged into Zoom. Anyway, so my name is Tatum Dwyer Sites. I own a building on the corner of 11th and Columbia, which is within 500 feet of the proposed site. I have a lot of concerns about it. I've experienced damage to my property, and I know many of my other business owners in the neighborhood have as well. I would say that this particular Zoom call is much more supportive in tone than the previous one I was on. So that's a good that, I mean, that maybe more people are getting out there to support it. And I would also like to give a big shout out to Demi Day at the YMCA, because I went over there today and I just wanted to talk to her, because on the last Zoom call, I really kind of felt like maybe people were just like, you know, telling me all the rainbows and unicorns of things, but not the downside of it. So I wanted to hear from the local places. So I stopped into a couple of businesses nearby and chatted with her. And Demi was wonderful. Love you, girl. She walked me over to the community. We walked in, we talked to Jamie. I got to see it firsthand. So I wasn't trying to pass too much judgment until I had actually been in one. That said, I still have concerns. I know that Lon was talking about he hasn't seen a decrease in price, you know, marketability of properties. But at the same time, I also think there's a big difference between this particular site being downtown, the core center, next to like Esther Short Park and the convention center, whereas the one over off of 51st Street is kind of on a dead end road with only, you know, an Applebee's and a 7-Eleven and stuff nearby. And the other one is on 4th Plain, kind of in a rough part of town. So I feel like you're not necessarily comparing apples to apples here on this one. But I did see a lot of great things today. So Demi, again, thank you so much. I saw really like well maintained housing there. People were very nice and open when I walked in. I was actually very pleasantly surprised. I was expecting to see, you know, icky and disgusting things, and I don't know what I was expecting, but it was really, it was good. It was good. That said, I still have a lot of reservations. I'm still concerned about it. I am very concerned that it's so close to our convention center where we're trying to lure people into Vancouver. I'm concerned that it's so close to Esther Short Park where we're doing Saturday markets and events. So like, is this really the ideal? Is this the only place in all of Vancouver we could find? I still have questions about that. So I guess some of my concerns at this point would be to say, like, I know that the mayor is on the call, and I went to the town or one of the meetings at City Hall a few weeks ago when Ann was there talking about like, well, what can we do as business owners nearby to be able to protect ourselves or our interests? And I've kind of made a list of things that I would like to see, but I don't know like if they're doable or possible or not. So I'm going to just rattle them off really quickly to not hog all the time, but I would like to, obviously the fencing, Jamie was talking about the fencing. I don't think a chain link fence is appropriate for downtown. You know, you have all these building, you know, guidelines as far as how the downtown should look. So obviously I think it should be a higher end fencing, especially to kind of conceal it. I know there's a bed and breakfast across the street. Sally is a wonderful lady who it could really directly impact her business. So it needs to be nice and clean. Transparency of the occupancy rates. I agree that we should have more of these, you know, we need to be able to, I know the Ninth Circuit Court passed, you know, this law, and the city has to provide places for people to go, but I also don't think we should overbuild. So if these places aren't being utilized because people can't, you know, like I heard today that there are some people who just can't live there, like they are too dependent on drugs or whatever, and they cannot fit into that kind of society. Well, I don't want to just keep building if nobody's going to come to those places. And then my thing, I guess, regarding to the mayors or to City Hall is, you know, we talked about maybe having some good neighbor requests. So one of the things I'd like to see is maybe increasing the 100 or 1,000 foot no camping buffer to 2,500 square feet, which would basically take from the lot down to the river, over to I-5 and up to McLaughlin Street, and then like west to the railroad tracks. Basically make that entire downtown buffer a no camping zone. Is that possible? Like, because 1,000 feet doesn't go very far. 1,000 feet, you could still have people camping at the south end of Esther Short Park and be within 1,000 feet of this place. So I'd like to bump up and make it more of a zone, I guess. And then my last request, and then I promise I'll be done, is that I'd like to see if there's a way to say no additional. I know Jamie kept saying, well, there's going to be one in downtown, there's going to be one in downtown. Okay, fine. If we sign off on this one in downtown and we embrace it, on your map earlier, you talked about services, and there were services in Hazeldale, Cascade Park. I mean, Vancouver is kind of a pretty big place, and we already have one now on 4th Plain, just up the street from us. And then if this one in downtown kind of seems like it's going to be a done deal, like it needs to go somewhere else besides downtown before you bring another one back here, even if the Lynch family or someone else gives you another lot. Can that be addressed? Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks again, Demi. Love the tour.
Yeah. Tatum, I just want to acknowledge and thank you for the efforts that you went through to learn more. You know, I know it took a lot of your own personal time, and it's a great example, and for bringing potential solutions to the city leaders and the staff that are looking at this, thinking about, you know, what you still have a lot of concerns, and that, you know, you're looking at how can you address those concerns. Is there, I know they'll take that under advisement. I don't know if there's anything that you want to clarify, or can we move on to another question, folks?
Yeah, you can move on. I just didn't know if that was possible.
Yeah. Okay. Let's, I know that the chat has been very active and you're getting your questions answered there. Since we have Bridget on the line, let's have her go next. And then, you know, we can run through some more of the chat things. I know people are getting their questions answered, but I want to make sure that if folks haven't seen those, that we call your attention to some of those questions and answers. Go ahead, Bridget. Oh, and you got to take yourself off mute. And right now I'm just seeing half of your face. There you go.
So, first of all, I'm chair of the Board of Outsiders In, so I'm incredibly proud of the work that they're doing and inspired in lots of ways by how they work with people who are unhoused. But I wanted to get on to comment because I was listening to the last person who talked. Without a safe stay site, there is no 1,000 foot buffer. And I worked for many years as regional director of Children's Home Society, which is the house behind the bed and breakfast and behind the legal outfit. And we had people who would camp in the trees between us and the bed and breakfast. And at that time, that was maybe 10, 12 years ago, there were no services for homeless people. There was no heart team to call. There were no safe stay sites. And so we have made tremendous strides. We have increasing number of people who are homeless, but it's really a sign of a caring community that it's better for us, including them. If we look at it that way, if we're housed and somebody else is unhoused, we're better off if everybody is housed. So this is no great sacrifice. This is a commercial area earlier. The bed and breakfast was between two children's mental health agencies. That's not a residential area. It's a transitional area. And the problems created were worked out by building relationships. And that's what Outsiders In does, is build relationships with neighbors so that the owners of properties who have problems can work them out, can talk about it, just as the YMCA has done. So I think a lot of the fear is probably misguided. 1,000-foot order is really quite appropriate. It gives people a way to handle the problems they have far more than they have right now. But I agree, we need a good fence. I suggest trees all around it. And I think it's the perfect spot. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for sharing your views. And it sounds like giving people some perspective on how that camping buffer can be beneficial. I did, as I'm looking at the chat, I just wanted to acknowledge to the group, if you haven't seen this in the chat, that we do have 2 successful graduates of the Outpost. James and Sabrina Thayer are here in their home, right? So congratulations, and we appreciate you taking the time to participate in this as well. I saw that Cheryl had a question and a concern around says she works with homeless veterans every day and her balcony will have a direct view, and there's a concern, you know, again, she's working with homeless but feels very oversaturated, and a concern that this type site in downtown might draw more people there. So, you know, Bridget just spoke about the buffer, but Jamie, is that something that you can speak to, that concern of drawing more people into the area? I don't know if there's been any experience with the other 2 sites that might be helpful to share with Cheryl around what that's doing in terms of saturation of the amount of people there.
Sure. So at the other 2 sites, we've really kind of seen it be the opposite because of that 1,000-foot buffer. It's not a place that, you know, people just kind of hang out, and it's certainly not a place that people are allowed to camp. So that's, I mean, I can just speak to the fact that that's not been our experience at the other 2 sites. Anyone in the public can obviously come and visit a city park. So you may find people hanging out in Esther Short Park, whether it be people who live in the safe stay or people who don't. But that's not been our experience so far.
Okay. All right. In looking at the chat, I'm noticing there's been a conversation between Aaron and Officer Chavers around law enforcement and the concern over, you know, will the city police be able to enforce this buffer, and concerns about drugs. So I'm wondering if we can bring that into just spend a little bit of time, maybe Officer Chavers, and just talk about how that's going to work, what the expectation is around strictly enforcing that buffer, and you know, questions around capacity to address concerns.
I might have missed the last little bit of your sentence. I think you might have said capacity.
Yes, I did.
Without a crystal ball, there's no way for me to guess about police staffing or capacity. I can just tell you my current experience with how we're enforcing the buffer, and one, without getting overly or hyperly focused on it, we don't actually get that many calls for violations of camping within the buffer. And the reason why is because there isn't a lot of conducive public property anywhere throughout the city, that, when people say, well, they could just park, they could camp near Esther Shore Park. Well, it's not true, because there's actually camping laws that prohibit camping within city parks. You can't block sidewalks, so they can't set up on the sidewalk. That's why we don't see them all over. You see them in places where it's not specifically prohibited. So anytime we get reports about an area that's specifically prohibited, we do go out and address those as our time and resources allow. Currently, we're able to stay on top of that with less than our entire department. Frankly, myself and a handful of neighborhood police officers handle the lion's share of those complaints. But again, there's not really that many since last December, when the first Safe Stay open, and the second one last spring. Probably 10 calls for service or less for both sites combined about a tent or a car camping in the area. And we've gone out and addressed it and have not had to make any arrests. We've just explained to people that they cannot be staying there within 1,000 feet. We explain how far they got to go, and typically it's a good opportunity for us to actually engage them with outreach and go through the process like we would, with anybody that we contact who's homeless in our community, in an effort to connect them with either our Safe Park or Safe Stays or other outreach programs. So it really hasn't been that big of a deal. We don't see them as a draw, partly because the 24/7 staff on site that staff them understand that that's part of the overall process for the system to make it a positive environment and successful, not only for the Safe Stay itself or the residents, but also the surrounding community. And because of that, most of those complaints have actually come into us from the operators at the location saying, hey, we're getting information, there's a tent, set up, 2 blocks over, or somebody said there's a car in the parking lot. And we've dealt with that. So that part really hasn't been a big deal. That's why I say I wouldn't hyper focus on it. We have all kinds, just a magnanimous volume of complaints about homeless in general, usually because of a lack of understanding about what is or isn't illegal and how to address it. But again, every one of those complaints to me is another opportunity to have a positive contact with somebody to begin their journey, their process back up and off the street, because that's ultimately our goal. Isn't to arrest everybody. Our goal is to work them back off the street, out of homelessness into housing.
Okay. There's just a little bit of commentary on the chat around the difference between camping and loitering, and how they're made, how that is going to be addressed. So I wonder if you could just speak to,
nationwide, there are no loitering laws in most cities. They've been struck down as unconstitutional if you're in a public place. So private property laws still prevent any kind of unwanted behavior on private property, because then it would be criminal trespassing enforced by police, surely as a trespass issue, regardless of what the loitering may have been. As far as loitering goes, merely seeing people in a public space is not enough reason for a law enforcement officer, especially in the state of Washington after the legislative changes in the last couple of years about police contact with citizens and negative encounters surrounding them. So we do not respond to, I see somebody I don't like in my neighborhood in a public place not doing anything wrong calls. If there's something truly suspicious, if there's something concerning, if there's a reason to do a welfare check on somebody, that's different. But mere loitering doesn't exist any longer. We need somebody to describe the actual behavior they're seeing and how law enforcement is needed before we can actually connect.
Okay, so it sounds like it's really around, is it public or private property, and then what's happening on either piece of property that then allows you to determine, is there something illegal happening? So I see Mary has her hand up, and we're just at 8:30. And so we're going to take that last question, and then we're going to stick around. We're going to take it off recording, but we're going to kind of officially close the meeting. So you can stick around or you can leave after that. Just that portion won't be recorded to allow people to have them, they feel more comfortable in that type of situation, asking a question. Go ahead, Mary.
So, hi, everybody, and I have a question with regards to the chat, because I know that there's some really powerful stuff in the chat. I'm wondering if the chat will become part of the recording. Will you be saving that chat transcript to be included with the transcript of the, or not transcript, but with the recording of the meeting?
I see William nodding his head. Yes.
Awesome. Great, because there's some really powerful stuff in the chat that can never be captured in a conversation.
Yeah,
So
it's
that
hard
was
to-
my only question, and
Okay.
I just yeah, that's all.
Yeah, no, it's true. And as much as try to bring it out, we only have so much time. So appreciate, try to do a balance of both. And yes, you do have access to that. So at this point, we're gonna end the recording. William, if you want to go ahead and take care of that. And then we'll continue.